Tomorrow is April 20th, also known as 420. It's a popular day for marijuana smokers. Sergeant Wade Cattermiss from the North Dakota Highway Patrol joins me to talk about the state's drug recognition expert training and also why they're going to be doing some extra patrolling this week. First of all, for those folks at home that don't know what the drug recognition expert training program is, can you kind of just explain it a little bit more?
Yes, gladly. Thank you for having me on to talk about this today. The Drug Recognition Expert Training, it's a program that recognizes impairment in drivers under the influence of drugs other than or in addition to alcohol. DRE conducts a series of detailed diagnostic tests and an examination of the person after they've been arrested or suspected of drug-impaired driving or a similar offense. And then based off of the findings through those series of tests and examinations, they'll determine if the individual is under some type of influence of drug.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how exactly that's done? Like, let's say you pull someone over and you smell alcohol in their breath. You know right away to go to a breathalyzer. But when it comes to being under the influence of drugs, that not necessarily is always true. You can't use a breathalyzer. So what kind of ways are troopers being trained to recognize someone being under the influence of drugs specifically?
Well, they train to judge individuals' demeanor, how they're acting at the time of the stop. Is somebody disoriented, or do they have bloodshot, watery eyes? Are they perspiring? Do they look pale? Do they look flushed? All those indications can indicate that there's an issue with the individual. At times it could be something medical, and that's what a DRE officer is trained to determine, whether or not the issue that's before them with the individual, is it medical or is it drug related? After they go through their series of tests, they should be able to assist the arresting officer and let them know from one of the 7 different classes of drugs which they feel that this person could be under the influence of, and that will help them focus the tests to get for the individual.
And do you notice yourself or your troopers out there on the road when there's a sort of a spike when it comes to arrests and people driving under the influence of drugs around this week in April?
I've been in law enforcement 20 years. There's always been an issue with individuals driving impaired with something other than alcohol. I personally arrested individuals that have been high off of some type of illicit drug or prescription medication that was actually prescribed to them that they're overusing or that they've obtained illegally. It's a lot harder to detect. Obviously, like you had mentioned earlier, you stop a vehicle, you can normally smell the alcohol on somebody. But, when somebody's acting different, it's hard to tell. You need to work through the determining on whether or not there's an actual medical episode. Individuals that are having a diabetic seizure, could or express or show some of the same symptoms. So you have to work through that. You don't always want to necessarily think it's something drug related. You want to ensure that the individual you're dealing with doesn't have some type of medical issue that you need to address.
And also something for our viewers, say they're driving on our highways and they notice that maybe a car in front of them is swerving or just not really staying in the lines or just making very erratic decisions while they're driving, and they think that they could be driving under the influence. What is the best thing that they should do?
Is to call 911. Obviously that individual is an unsafe driver to begin with. Whether the individual is tired, they're distracted, or they're impaired from drugs or alcohol, they're a danger to the motoring public. So the best thing to do is get a good description of the vehicle, license plate, direction of travel, last known location, and notify 911.
Okay, I only have time for one last question. Tell us a little bit about ND Sober Ride so that people that are under the influence, they can always get themselves a safe ride home.
Correct. If you're happen to live in a location where you have a rideshare program, ND Sober Ride, they do offer discounts at times to where you sign up or request your ride, and you can use a discount to get a free ride if you've been out drinking that night.
Absolutely. Don't drink and drive, and don't drive high as well. Well, coming up on today's show, we have your daily dose of motivation.